something unimaginable happened yesterday in the Ukraine war that we want to bring your attention to, something we didn't see coming. In fact, I had to look at the calendar just to make sure that it wasn't April Fool's Day. But no, it's not. It's not April 1st. Yesterday, discussions about peace unfolded around Ukraine. This all started, it was coming out of Washington, D.C. So liberals yesterday, 30 or so progressive Democrats, so-called progressive Democrats, led by Pramila Jayapal, who have up until this point openly funded the corrupt government of Ukraine. They wrote an open letter to President Biden calling for the White House to back off its war strategy in Ukraine and begin immediate ceasefire negotiations. Peace talks? Really? Really? I mean, nothing moves the needle like a strongly worded letter. You know, they didn't make any television appearances, but they did write a letter, which is more than we can ask for, I guess.
Well, one of their main points is self-preservation, not just of their political career, but American borders. They said if this continues to ratchet up, we risk this war coming to our own shores, so that, you know, this will escalate into something we have to deal with. Right now, it's something we're choosing to. So, you know, that's pretty logical. Those are things we've been saying.
Yes, exactly. You want to attack, you know, the nuclear submarines attacking Los Angeles? Like, is that something you want? So stop it now. Peace talks now. Stop provoking the bear. And then almost immediately, at the same time that the White House, it was like almost amazing. I couldn't believe it. The White House then leapt into action. It was unbelievable. Pencil neck Ned Price, he's the spokesperson for the U.S. State Department. Yes, this is the same U.S. State Department that has openly funding drag shows in Ecuador with U.S. taxpayer dollars. Ned Price came out with a stunning statement about the very same corrupt Zelensky government in Ukraine. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what he was saying. The United States is rolling out massive sanctions, he said, against the corrupt government of Ukraine. Listen to all of the abuses that we've been covering on this show for months. Listen to Ned Price about Ukraine.
Into a single-party authoritarian state that silences dissent, imprisons political opponents, shutters independent media and non-governmental organizations, attacks religious leaders, and uses proceeds from the production and sale of gold to enrich regime insiders and pay off those to keep them in power.
Wow, holy shit, right? It's amazing. The U.S. is finally waking up and sanctioning Ukraine for shutting down political opposition, for human rights abuses, for taking control over the media, for censorship, for stealing billions of dollars and enriching Zelensky's pockets along with his corrupt cronies, and for killing journalists and making people disappear. That's all good news. Ned Price at the State Department? What? I'm sorry. He wasn't talking about Ukraine? Oh, my bad. I thought for sure. Are you sure about that? Because, he wasn't talking about Ukraine. He was talking about Nicaragua. Okay. Which will now, as of this morning, be sanctioned by the United States because of those very abuses. Here's the correct video.
Today, the White House announced a series of coordinated actions to respond to Nicaragua's dissent under President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo into a single-party authoritarian state that silences dissent, imprisons political opponents, shutters independent media and non-governmental organizations, attacks religious leaders, and uses proceeds from the production and sale of gold to enrich regime insiders and pay off those to keep them in power.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got so confused there because, wow, it sounds an awful lot like what the U.S.'s own State Department website has to say to this day about Ukraine, in large part, about human rights abuses, about the corruption, about disappearing journalists. I thought they were finally taking action on all of this.
Yes, no, those things still are listed as something that Ukraine does on the U.S. State Department. They still do believe that. They don't say it anymore. They pretend that it's just, fiction. It's like fiction. The State Department, they were funding some drag shows, and they also do fiction writing competitions, I suppose.
Unbelievable. So yeah, we're now sanctioning Nicaragua for those very things. So that's great. But at least we still have those 30 progressive Democrats, right, who wrote a strongly worded letter calling for peace. Like, okay, maybe there is still a silver lining in all of this April Fool's Day chicanery that I'm seeing right now. Here is the letter that these 30 progressive Democrats sent to the White House. Dear Mr. President, we write with appreciation for your commitment to Ukraine's legitimate struggle against Russia's war of aggression, blah, blah, blah. Then it goes on. Given the destruction created by this war in slide number 2, given the destruction created by this war for Ukraine and the world, as well as the risk of catastrophic escalation, we also believe it's in the interest of Ukraine, the United States, and the world to avoid a prolonged conflict. For this reason, we urge you to pair the military and economic support the United States has provided to Ukraine with a proactive diplomatic push, redoubling efforts to seek a realistic framework for a ceasefire. This is consistent with your recognition that there's going to have to be a negotiated settlement here, and your concern that Vladimir Putin does have a way out right now, and I'm trying to figure out what we do about that. So Democrats are basically saying, you've already said this. We're giving you now, let's go along with that. Let's call for peace, negotiated peace, right? They go on. But as legislators responsible for the expenditure of tens of billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars in military assistance in the conflict, we believe such involvement in this war also creates a responsibility for the United States to seriously explore all possible avenues, including direct engagement with Russia to reduce harm and support Ukraine in achieving a peaceful settlement. In May, President Zelensky, despite deadlocked negotiations, reiterated that the war will only definitively end through diplomacy and had previously explained that any mentally healthy person, I love this part, and any mentally healthy person always chooses the diplomatic path because he or she knows, even if it's difficult, it can prevent the loss of thousands, tens of thousands, and maybe even millions of lives. Great. So peace then, right?
So let's do that right now, because we don't like the idea of lives being lost in this moment, in the time it took you to read this letter.
Right, exactly. How many more people will have died because there's bombing unfolding tonight, which we'll get to in a minute. So negotiations, peace, let's do it, right? Let's get on that, right? You have the door now. No nuclear war. Just as soon as they put out this letter, stunning. The warmongers in Congress, these little MFers, jumped all over them. And they backtracked on this as quickly as they released the letter. Democrats and Republicans, mostly Democrats though, the party of peace, jumped all over them. Progressives urge Biden shift on Ukraine before backpedaling, writes Bloomberg. So what actually happened? Well, it was like a simple backpedal at first. Pramila Jayapal's office put out a little statement, sort of, like walking it back. We stand firmly with Ukraine. And then, just before the show, we now have a full-on backpedaling. Here's how Glenn Greenwald features this. He says, holy shit, the humiliation of Representative Jayapal in the House Progressive Caucus just got worse, even when it appeared it couldn't. Her degrading reversal of their Ukraine letter after one day wasn't enough. Now they're formally retracting it and blaming staff members.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Do the same people work at PayPal?
Wait. Yes. Hang on. So like staff members of 30 Congress people got together and wrote this letter in the name of these Congress. That is an amazing lapse in security and judgment on somebody's part somewhere, if that's true.
Or they were pressured into it by their, kind of kid junior lackeys.
I mean, it was staff members' fault. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so let me just read to you. This is the letter that was now the retraction letter. I don't know if I can pull this. No, I can't. I'll just read it to you because I can't get it up here closer. But this is the actual retraction letter. I'm going to read to you. Why it's not... hold on. There we go. It grew on me. There we go. So yes, this is the Congressional Progressive Caucus chair statement on the Ukraine letter. Representative Pramila Jayapal, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, issued the following statement in a letter sent regarding Ukraine. The Congressional Progressive Caucus hereby withdraws its recent letter to the White House regarding Ukraine. The letter was drafted several months ago. But unfortunately, it was released by staff members without vetting. So we're going to pick that apart in a second, right? Because I think that's total bullshit, don't you? As chair of the caucus, I accept responsibility for this. Because of the timing, our message is being conflated by some as being equivalent to the recent statement by Republican leader McCarthy threatening to end aid to Ukraine if Republicans take over. The proximity of these statements created the unfortunate appearance that Democrats who have strongly and unanimously supported and voted for every package of military, strategic, and economic assistance to the Ukrainian people are somehow aligned with Republicans who seek to pull the plug on American support for Zelensky and the Ukrainian forces. Nothing could be further from the truth. I love Andre in our chat is just laughing emojis. I mean, you cannot make this crap up. And it goes on. Every war ends with diplomacy. And this one will too, after Ukrainian victory. Okay, so when you have a victory, do you need diplomacy? Like, after World War II, we didn't have diplomacy with Nazi Germany. They were done when the Red Army moved through, right? And Americans showed up in Berlin, and so did the Red Army. Like, there was no diplomacy. You're done. So where's the diplomacy going to come from after this, after Ukraine is totally destroyed? But they say Ukraine will totally win. So, okay, that means the destruction then of Russia, which we'll see. The letter sent yesterday, they said, although restating the basic principle has been conflated with the GOP opposition to support for Ukrainians' just defense of their national sovereignty. As such, it's a distraction and we withdraw the letter.
It doesn't work like that. This is not an undo send button.
Oh, my God.
But that, I mean, it sounds lame, their excuse. But then also a lot of the things that they wrote in the letter were referenced like throughout the summer. There's nothing that was, happened maybe this month that I'm trying to go through the quotes that they're saying that Zelensky said in May. The Biden quote saying Putin has no way out. That also was late in the spring. But
so to Philip's point, there's no freaking way.
No.
I mean, how do you don't release a letter like this to the White House, to the President of the United States 2 weeks before an election?
And then say we didn't mean it.
Yeah, and we didn't mean it. And of course, all of this, and look, it all comes on the heels of, we're going to get to it in a second, but, a lot of these members of the Progressive Caucus being shouted down by their constituents for backing this war, for backing nuclear war, for not voting against war, for not being more vocal to be anti-war. Again, progressives, they're supposed to be anti-war. What the hell are you doing?
Well, and somebody should ask them, but you felt like this at one point. You absolutely felt like peace was imperative and that escalating this war was a bad idea. So what happened between the drafting a couple months ago and now that makes you feel differently?
Now, you're operating on the assumption that they are telling the truth about this, that it was a few months ago they drafted this letter.
I guess I'm poking holes in the...
You're giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I appreciate that, right? That they had this thing 2 months ago or 3 months ago, and now it just inadvertently staff members sent it to the president.
You're right. It's stupid.
But even if that were true, that still doesn't make them look good because it still should apply.
Right. And I was going to say, it's worse now. So if you're calling for peace, like now we're literally a dirty bomb, a dirty nuclear bomb sitting in Ukraine, NATO forces amassing 100,000 forces now ready to go from on the NATO side and U.S. side in Ukraine. You have General David Petraeus calling for an all-out invasion, which we'll get to in the next block. Like, hello. So this letter is more appropriate than ever, but don't let that don't listen to us. Listen to warmonger and stooge. We can skip that one, Philip. Listen to warmonger and stooge Max Boot, who wears a fedora like it's 1955. He claims to be a journalist. He represents the establishment wing of the Democratic Party. He just wrote a laughable piece in Jeff Bezos's Washington Post saying all of this peace talk and negotiations and weakness on Ukraine will lead to Republicans winning on November 8th. He says if current trend holds up, Republicans are likely to take over at least the House and quite possibly the Senate too, along with many state offices. That is how democracies die.
You got to say that like he probably does. This is how democracies die, see?
Yeah,
See?
it does.
See?
It's like a Dick Tracy.
I'm working
era
on this
hat.
story.
Yeah.
See?
Stop the presses.
So let me just get this right, Max Boot. So democracy dies when Republicans take over and they pull back on the money going to Ukraine. I see. And pushing for peace. That's how democracy dies. Just so we're on the same page, Max Boot. By the way, when you look at Max Boot, when you wear a hat like this in 2022, it not only means you're a douchebag, it also means you want people to notice you. Look at me. I have this 1950s affectation. I'm self-important.
Well, he's wearing the costume of a journalist. I mean, and
I'm
it's
breaking
Halloween,
stories.
so-
I'm getting stories right from the intelligence state mouth, and then I regurgitate that same stuff. Like, he's not out getting stories.
Well, my biggest problem is not necessarily the hat with this screenshot. And it does look like, I don't know, it's a drawing, whatever. But the idea that after we go through this democratic process of election, this is how democracies die, right?
Yeah.
We're about to actually exercise a democracy, but okay, sure. But because you think that the outcome will be undesirable to you, you're telling me that it's how democracy dies.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, this is how democracy dies, when we have people who vote, right? I want to take a closer look at his column because I think it's instructive to understand how the American electorate is right now. And he hit the nail right on the head in the first paragraph of his column here. He says, this is Max Boot. He says, polls suggest that the economy and crime are among the most important issues for voters in the midterm. Next slide. And that as a result, Republicans are surging in the home stretch. I think a lot of voters are missing the point. These elections are actually a referendum, he writes, on whether you favor the continuation of democracy in America and Ukraine. Wait a minute. So just to be clear, he's saying
That Ukraine's on the ballot.
well, and he's also saying that America is a democracy. And he's also saying that Ukraine is a democracy. And so we're having a continuation of these democracies. Has he not been paying attention to what Ukraine does? Like, it's listed as the most corrupt government in Europe, and it's listed on the State Department's website for corruption and human rights abuses. So I'm not quite sure I follow you on this continuation of democracy, taking over state media, silencing journalists and critics, getting rid of the opposition. How is that democracy? Can you please explain that to me, Max Boot, with your askew hat? Anyway, he continues. He says, those issues are more closely linked than most people realize because most of the same MAGA candidates who support Donald Trump's strongman rule at home are either indifferent or hostile to the fate of democracy abroad. Okay. Oh, so wanting lower crime and a stronger economy in America makes you an enemy. So Democrats are losing because they're more focused on Ukraine than they are on Americans.
Also, I
He's
love
right.
it when, people tell other people how they feel. They feel indifferent and hostile,
Right.
right? Because it's something that he can't. Again, the sort of Trumpism that has spread across certain countries is America first, or Brazil first, or Hungary first. This is the type of politics that is spreading from the Trump camp, not necessarily how they feel about democracy, but it's wonderful that you can tell other people how they feel.
Yeah. So you need to suffer. You need to suffer so Ukraine can have democracy. That's what he's telling you.
It's just that sentence alone is one of the things that Clayton and I try so hard not to do on this show, is tell other people who they are or how they feel or what they think. And he's so comfortable doing that
Right.
I try so hard not to do this all the time.
Well, he's a Beltway elite. He doesn't talk to actual Americans. When's the last time he left Washington, D.C. with that hat on and actually went and talked to real people? He says we should let our country die because that's the right thing to do. Let our country die because we need to support Ukraine. He literally says, quote, you are either indifferent or hostile to the fate of democracy abroad, end quote. It's like the CIA just handing him talking points. Like, if you want low crime in the United States, you must hate Ukraine. Like,
Okay.
that's the equivalency here. If you want jobs in the United States, then you must hate Ukraine. What? No, we don't hate the Ukrainian people. What are you talking about? It's just we have an absolute crisis on our hands and we need to take care of our own people. and not be put at gunpoint being told we need to ship billions of dollars to a country that is corrupt and the money is disappearing into the hands of terrorists and we don't know where that money is going? That's a question we should all be asking. He's right.
That and it's the false dichotomy of like you either support democracy, which is dropping bombs on people, or you're hostile towards democracy and how the hell is that the only two options we have? We can't. I would be full on to like, let's spread democracy to the world. Let's not do it with bombs.
Right.
Yes.
Let's have a little, we'll have like a prayer sit-in. Like, let's all sit together and have some prayers together.
Well, that's
like,
a little condescending, though. I think Philip is saying there probably is a way that's not like a prayer, is somewhere in between the spectrum of prayer circle and bomb. Like, is there a different
Well, I don't
way?
know how it's condescending. I'm just saying.
Oh, I thought you were making fun.
No. I'm not. I'm just saying.
I don't feel condescended against.
Okay, good. All right. I was playing mother hen. I apologize.
I just mean like, yeah, there's a much better way through communication. Like Zelensky's like, we're not even talking anymore. We're not going to talk. We're not going to talk to Russia at all. No. Just through bombs. Oh, okay. So America's just supposed to go blindly and support that. But he is right, though. Democrats are losing because they can't answer the simple question. Why are you pushing us into a nuclear war over a corrupt government like Ukraine? Watch as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who ran as an anti-war candidate, then later removed it from her website. She can't answer the basic questions from her constituents in New York about supporting this war. Watch.
You're voting to start a thermonuclear war with Russia and China. Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against.
I'll get to the issue last. I will get to the issue.
Why not right now?
Because you are being rude to everybody around you.
Jimmy, what do you think?
Being rude. So she won't answer that question, and neither will the other members of the Progressive Caucus, but they'll retract an open peace letter to President Biden because it was a mistake. We blame it on our staff members. We're sorry about that. So she won't answer that question, but at least now Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez this afternoon is now making new videos. Is she calling for peace? No. She's making ASMR voting videos. Watch.
You know, if politics doesn't work out, I can always start one of these channels. Vote. Early voting.
Yeah, you're given so many reasons to vote, right? Like, oh my God, honey, did you see what AOC put out on TikTok this afternoon? We got to go vote for her.
Well, she's trying to be cute.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how that's an excuse. She's trying to be cute. That's enough of that.
I'm not saying that as an excuse.
All right.
She does look very proud of herself for being cute.
Yeah, she's very proud of herself.